Alright, ready for video number 3. We are going to assemble the lining now. So at the end of video 2, I had only sewed on one end panel and I went ahead and sewed the other one on, so the exterior is completely together. And now we're going to start with step number 22. So you want to take 2 lining slit pockets. Sorry, I live near trains so you can hear them because my window's open. Alright, so make sure you have the lining pocket pieces, not the main panels. So 2 lining slit pockets, and you want to place those right sides together. Alright, match the top edge and clip that. Or if you're good with not clipping, I mean, you could just, it's a straight edge, you could probably sew it without clipping it. Alright, let me make sure my machine is on. It is. Alright, so we're going to sew just along this top edge using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Back stitch. Ooh. I probably could use gray thread here. Let's see, I think I will. I'm going to use gray thread on the lining, or at least part of it. I'm going to pause the video actually. I'll rethread my machine with gray, and then I'm going to press these wrong sides together and then press that top seam well, and I'll be right back. Okay, I pressed these wrong sides together, and now I'm going to top stitch this top seam, and I also changed my thread to gray. Stitch length will go 4. Alright, and now we want to take a lining main panel and place that right side up. Match the sides and bottom edge of the lining main panel with the slit pockets. Get the side that you want to face out. I mean, if there's a particular side, mine are both the same. So line that up. I'm going to clip around the edges and then baste it together. And I typically baste at a 1/4 inch. If the seam allowance is 1/2 inch, then I baste it a 1/4 inch. If it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I baste at 1/8 of an inch. Typically the only time I have a smaller seam allowance is along zippers. So probably match that up a little better before I start clipping it, huh? Alright, so let's baste that in place. You can use your longest stitch length and a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. best if your layers start to shift. Once you've basted that in place, I'll switch this back to a shorter stitch length. I'm going to go with 3, and we're actually going to divide the pocket into 2. So you can either draw a line using the pattern piece down the center, or you can press it in half. I actually have some kind of overhang here I'm going to trim. The pocket didn't line up exactly. At all. All right. So I'm going to press this in half. I'm going to go to the ironing board and do that actually to get a nice crease and top stitch along that crease. Okay, I pressed down the center to create a crease, and now I'm going to sew directly along that crease line. And I put my sewing machine on a stitch length of 3 for this, just because it's actually like holding the pocket into 2 separate pieces, so give it a little more durability. And just go up to the top of the pocket. Alright, when you reach the top, back stitch there, and then I stitch forward and back stitch again. Just kind of really secure that well, because it will have some strain on that part. Alright, and put those threads. Alright, so let's make our zipper interior pocket. First, let me get my pieces. So I kind of messed up when I was cutting my pieces out, and I cut the inner facing 14 inches long, but I only cut my fabric 13 inches long, and I don't have enough of this to recut those pieces, so we're just going to go with it. And I don't want to make the pocket smaller because it is a lot to turn with that front pocket on the bag. It's a lot to turn right side out through that hole. So I'm going to, normally you would, where's my ruler? You would measure your box so it stopped 1 inch from each short edge, and I'm going to stop it a ½ inch from each short edge, and we'll see what happens. So all right, so we want to measure a box that is 1 inch down from the top edge and 12 inches long and a ½ inch wide. So how I do that, just like this, and since this is 13 inches wide, I'm going to start the box ½ inch from each end. If you cut your pattern pieces right, or if you cut the zipper panels out right, you will start 1 inch from each end. So that's what you should be doing. Don't do what I do. Measure twice, cut once, especially when you don't have extra fabric. All right. Okay, so there's the whole box, and we will put that on the other lining panel that does not have the slip pockets sewn on. And we want that to be right sides together, centered. So to center usually for centering most anything, I just fold it in half and make it, oop, don't move it. Fold it in half and kind of finger press it to make a crease. And then open it back up, and then you can see where that crease is. And then I want that to be 1 inch down from the top as well. So I'm just going to eyeball that. And this will actually have to pin. So just throw a few pins in around here. And when I sew my zipper pocket on, I do that with a shorter stitch length. So I will take that down to 2.5 now. Okay. Let's get this out of the way. All right, now we're just going to sew directly over that box. And back stitch. Sure what that is. Is it a loud car or plane? Maybe a helicopter? All the way to the corner. Back to the bottom, stitching line, and all right. Now we'll trim our threads, remove the pins. All right, and we now will draw a line down the center. And you want to stop 1/2 inch from the end of each side of the rectangle. So it's a 1/4 inch from one side, stop 1/2 inch from each side, about. That doesn't have to be exact. All right, and then draw from that lines from the end of that center line to each corner. All right, now you can use a rotary cutter if you prefer, or just scissors. I usually use my rotary cutter. Just fold that together to start a cut, and then cut right along that line. And then just be careful when you cut up into the corners that you don't cut through your stitching. But cut as close as you can to it without cutting through it. I'm going to go over to the ironing board. I'm going to flip this pocket through the hole to the back so the wrong sides are together, and then just leave that rectangle hole open. I'll show you as soon as I get back from ironing it. Alright, I'm back. I have this pressed nice and flat, and we're going to sew the zipper in. So some people use tape to hold their zipper in place. You could pin it. What I find that's easiest, or what's easiest for me anyway, I use washable school glue, and I just put a line of it along each long edge. And it dries clear, so I mean, if it does show anywhere, you won't see it. Alright. And then I want my zipper pull to be to that side. And I just center my zipper in the hole. And then flip it over. And then actually make sure it's centered properly. Take your time so it's not wavy. All right. Hopefully that opens easier once I'm not holding it weird. If I sew it in and it doesn't work, that'd be bad. Alright, so once it's centered, you want to press that down. I don't know if this makes a difference or not, but I like to take like my small ruler and just really press that down. It seems to hold it better. I mean, and it only needs to hold it long enough to get over to the sewing machine to sew it, so. Alright. So now I want kind of a longer top stitching stitch length, so I go with 4. See if we can get this over here without moving it too much. I'm making my glue look like a bad idea. It's not working. I think the zipper had a little like crease in it. I just have like a giant bag of zippers. So all right. I'm real quick gonna just pull this up and put just a little bit more glue on the zipper to hold it. Just so that it doesn't shift around by the time I get over there. All right, so back stitch, and then sew all the way around your zipper. I'm using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I always hand crank my machine when I get to the end so that I can stop right at the corner and have sharp 90-degree turns in my stitching. Alright. Should have made sure I had this lined up right before I glued it down real well. Okay. does work, so that's good. I'm just right now underneath pulling the two ends of the zipper together, or the two sides, I guess. And final point, back to the original stitching, and then back stitch. And I'll trim those seams, or trim the threads. And see where there's any glue, you can kind of scrape it off, or it doesn't really show since it dries clear. All right, now you'll take your other lining zipper pocket panel, something like that. Clips, and we are clipping this right sides together with the panel that's attached. And you're going to sew them together at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and make sure that you fold the main panel back out of the way as you go. I prefer to sew it with the main panel facing up. So like this, and then fold the main panel back out of the way. And you'll start sewing at the bottom of the pocket. Do not sew the bottom closed. Leave that open. Very important for turning. And I use a stitch length of 3 for this. Back stitch really well here because you will be turning the whole entire bag through that pocket. And that front pocket on the exterior is pretty big. It makes the turning a little bit more difficult for this bag. Now we're going to trim this seam allowance. Let's see where we're at. So we're on step number 28. Oh, that's funny. I don't say to trim the seam allowance down. I like to trim it. I guess it doesn't matter. It makes it easier at the end. At the very end of the bag, when you're folding in the bottom, the open edges of the pocket to top stitch that closed, it makes it easier to fold in if that seam allowance is trimmed. This looks like a hack job. So we have our lining zipper pocket in. Right now, open the zipper. Does that not work well? I think it's okay. Okay, open the zipper up and keep it open. And I tell you again later to open it, and just do it. So we are going to make the elastic bottle pockets right now. So we want to place them right sides together. Like I said before, I didn't have enough of my lining fabric, so these pockets are not even the same size. What am I doing? This one is. Let me show you this one. Or maybe not. I will be right back. Let me go figure out what I didn't cut right. Okay. So we are placing these right sides together. This is the 2 elastic bottle pockets, or it's good for diapers. You could fit 2 bottles in each pocket. I kept them wider on purpose so it could be used for something besides bottles. So it could be used for mom's water. If it's a travel bag, somebody suggested underwear, that it was a good place to, you know, keep your socks and underwear. So we are going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. So I know that's different than most places in the pattern. Your shorter stitch length. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one now too. Alright, so let me pause this and flip these wrong sides together and press them. Okay, these have been pressed wrong sides together. Now I'm going to top stitch this, but not at 1/8 of an inch. We're going to top stitch with a 3/4 inch seam allowance. And that is because we're going to put elastic in here. So, back stitch there. I probably should have switched back to black thread for this, but that'll do. Alright, and then we're going to baste the bottom edge together. That bottom looks a little crooked. 1/4 inch seam allowance for this. Just basting that. I'm going to cut off the extra of that front red part there. Okay. Ooh, that was almost bad. Trim all my threads. Set that aside, and then same thing on this one, 3/4 inch seam allowance, back stitch, why am I trimming threads with these scissors? And then sew those together. I'll actually toss a couple clips in here because that last part shifted on me. And just a 1/4 inch seam allowance again. I'm already basting the ends together, so, or the bottom edge, sorry. So now we are going to make pleats in the bottom of this. We will make marks across the bottom. We'll mark with this. We need one mark at, and this is step number 30. One mark at 2.75 inches. So it's right there. It's hard to see this. 2.75, 4 inches. I should put the numbers right, that would probably help me. Six, 8, and 9.25. So that's 2.25 away from that one. No, that's wrong. 9.251 here. Okay. So you want to make those 5 marks, and we'll do that on the bottom of the other one as well. 2.75, 4, 6, 8, and then 9.25. Okay, so we're going to do these pleats the same as we did the pleats on the outside pockets. Let me grab a couple clips. So we want to pinch together at the second mark, lining sides together, and bring that mark down on top of the first mark. And then pinch together at the 8-inch mark and bring that down to the 9.25-inch mark and clip. And then we're going to do the same thing with the bottom of the other bottle pocket. So we've got the 4-inch mark down on top of the 2.75-inch. And then the 4-inch mark, pinch together and bring that down on top of that last mark. All right, now we'll baste just along the bottom, all 4 of those pleats in place. On this one. And this one. So now we need 2 10-inch pieces of elastic and a safety pin. Let me get those. Okay, hopefully my camera stays. It's kind of keeps moving. So I have a 10-inch piece of elastic, and I stick a safety pin in one end. Put the safety pin into the channel that we created by using that 3/4 inch seam allowance. And well, they actually make tools for this. I think it's called a bodkin, but I don't have one. So use that though to slide the elastic through the channel. I also have a tool that's meant for strap turning that I bet would work really well for this. Tube turning, maybe I'll call that, because I don't make my straps like that. Alright, so I want to pull this until I have about 1/2 inch of elastic sticking out that end. And then let's stitch back and forth over that a few times to secure that end in place. Alright, and then finish moving this along until you get the safety pin there, and then pull out about 1/2 inch out of that side of the elastic and sew that into place as well. And I sew them right to the very top seam where the lining and the exterior, well, I guess they're both technically lining, but where the two pieces of pocket match up. Alright, I'll take my, I'm going to trim this elastic off. Alright, and now we have the center marked here, and I'm going to fold a side panel in half to mark the center there, and then mark the centers of the side panel and the elastic pocket panel. Okay, and we'll pin once there, and we're going to sew this from the wrong side of the side panel. So I'll just pin along the bottom a few times and then flip this over to the back because we don't have the corners cut here. So we're going to sew along the side panel and then trim off the rest. It's nice outside, so people have their windows down and their music loud. I don't know if you can hear that. So now just use like a 1/4 inch seam allowance to base this pocket in place from the wrong side. And now we're going to trim away the excess pocket from the corners. Just a little bit up here. Alright, so from the right side, this is what we have, and I actually already assembled the other one. So see though, that opens up really wide, so you could fit cloth diapers in there. A lot of disposable diapers could fit. 2, maybe even 3 bottles would fit, so lots of room there. Here's my other one already assembled, and now we're just going to repeat steps 20 to 21 to assemble the bag lining, just as we did the exterior, but instead of a 1/2 inch seam allowance, we'll use a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Again, make sure that that is unzipped to your lining zip pocket. Throw a couple clips in here. All right, I have about 25 minutes to see if I can get this done before I have to go pick my son up from the mall. Okay, so we have the bottom panel right sides together with one lining main panel, and now we're sewing these together using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. haven't run out of bobbin thread, I probably will sometime soon. Alright, and before I press that, actually, I'm going to go ahead and sew the bottom of this lining main panel to this bottom panel. And then I'll do all the top stitching at once there. So pin that in place. I do pin a little bit less when I'm not trying to be, well, when I'm not being filmed. So that way if I'm not perfect, nobody knows. Alright, 5/8 inch seam allowance again. Oh, there it went. I knew I was almost out of bobbin. Alright, let's see. This is all lining. Nobody's ever going to know that I used a different color bobbin thread. Don't tell. I just don't feel like filling a bobbin right now. Press this way. Okay, I pressed the seam allowance toward the bottom panel on both of those seams, and now I'm going to top stitch them both through the bottom panel at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I actually increased my stitch length. Trim all of my threads, and now I need to find the centers of the bottom panel, so I'll just fold this whole thing in half, finger press that to mark the center on each end.